this is a talented starting five. There are talented players within the starting five, but we know there were questions about if it was a good fit of players. And even though all of the individuals within the starting five have played really well this season, and if it hasn't been like the whole season, which it has been for Barrett, Barnes, and Ingram, it's been much better as of late, such as Emmanuel Quickley and Jakob Poeltl. All these players are playing well individually, but as a group, strangely, it is not really working, even though the Raps are 9-5 and currently sit third in the Eastern Conference. So let's try to investigate why that is the case, and if a change in the starting five is needed for the team to be even better. Like I said, 9-5, we're doing well. Raps are winning. All those players are playing well. But it just feels like every game the Raptors play, just from watching it, and I noticed it in the game against the Charlotte Hornets, they kind of just put themselves in a hole to start games and have to climb out of it. Happened against Brooklyn, a game that should have been comfortable. They put themselves in a hole, ended up coming back and not really playing well to do it and winning, which is fine. But it almost it could have cost them potentially the Charlotte game. And it was a long game, and these are just the starts. But they consistently start poorly in these games. At least that's what it kind of felt like. And I was looking for some statistics to see if it would back it up or if it was just me seeing something that wasn't actually there. Well, we have some numbers on it. Really good numbers were pulled up here by, hopefully I say this name correctly, Zulfi Shaikh. Hopefully I said that correctly. I believe of Raptors Republic. Yes, Sportsnet at Raptors Republic. And he notes an interesting tidbit about the Raptors starters. In the first quarter, they averaged 19.9 points per game, which is 23rd. And they have a minus 5.3 net rating, which would be 23rd in the NBA. That's very bad. In the fourth quarter, though, the Raptors starters averaged 21.2 points per game, which is third in the NBA, which is very good. And they have a net rating of plus 7.4, which is fifth in the NBA, which is also very good. So for some reason, to start games, this unit is not working together. It is not producing very good numbers. And to end games, it is producing very good numbers in clutch circumstances sometimes, like the game against the Charlotte Hornets, where the Raptors had to produce in the end and got some massive plays out of their star guys in order to get that win. So really interesting numbers there. It does confirm my theory, if you will, on starting games slowly. And I'm wondering if it's just not the right mesh of talent. Even though there's talent, I'm wondering if it's not the right mesh of talent. I looked into the net ratings overall, and I'm glad we had the first quarter numbers that kind of show the differences. But I looked at the net ratings overall as well, and we see that the starting five, in the 129 minutes they've played together this season, they have a net rating of 0. Even. And they brought this number up. It was lower. It was in the negatives. And it was like -5 a week and a half ago. A week and a half ago. Anyways, starters on the floor together, 0 net rating. And you would really want, like, a team that's winning and is 9-5, you would really want it to be the case that your best players on the floor together are winning. But that just hasn't quite been the case, at least especially at the gate for the Raptors this season. So we're not making any massive proclamation here. We're not saying definitively that something needs to change. I'm not prepared to make that change as of yet. But I think we should start to get to the point where we are exploring the possibility of making the change. I'm using like a lot of political speak to not say anything like incriminating against myself here. But we need to start thinking about if changing the starting five would be better for the Raptors. I tried to look a little bit further into this on like specific lineups that have worked the best for the Raptors, like the specific lineups where they are at their best, that like you take out, for instance, RJ Barrett and put somebody else in with the starters, how good those lineups look. Unfortunately, there just isn't enough data to actually give us any quality answers on like what's working so far this season. There just isn't a large enough sample size of Quickley, Ingram, Barnes, and Poeltl with Barrett off. We've only had 11 minutes in total this season with Poeltl, Barnes, Ingram, and Quickley together with somebody else. And in those 11 minutes, extremely tiny sample size, they have a net rating of -25, which doesn't tell us really anything because it is such a small sample size. Like you take Barrett, Ingram, Barnes, Pirtle without quickly, they have a net rating in 4 minutes of minus 119. Again, that's not really telling us anything because of how small the sample size is. But there is a pretty good sample size of 129 minutes with the starters playing together, and just things maybe aren't quite clicking out the gate. Is it too many mouths to feed? Is it not enough floor spacing? Is it not enough defense? Kind of difficult to really say definitively right now, but I would really theorize that it is floor spacing, because we've seen in a lot of scenarios that Barnes has thrived in lineups that do have a little bit more spacing because he gets more space to play. He's able to get to the rim more often. And unfortunately, like when we have this conversation on changes starting five, the obvious odd man out, and it is the obvious odd man out, it's RJ Barrett. As much as he's been outplaying Emmanuel Quickley this season, as much as he's probably been playing better than Jakob Poeltl this season, that's the player that makes the most sense to take out, because that's the player that is inferior to Barnes and Ingram and needs the same caliber of touches as they do. Needs the ball to try and get to the rim. A little ball dominant alongside Ingram and Barnes. Not a great floor spacer. He's shot the ball fine from three this season. That doesn't mean he's a good floor spacer. He's not spacing the floor for these guys. So he's the obvious one for me that would come out of the starting five, and you'd insert somebody like Grady Dick, who the Raptors have been really doing well in his minutes this season, despite the fact he hasn't been spectacular. The Raptors have been doing really well in the Grady Dick minutes this season. And a lot of that likely has to do with floor spacing and the attention he brings to the perimeter. That doesn't mean RJ Barrett's getting 20 minutes a game. Like, we saw the last game against the Hornets. Here are the minutes distribution for the starters. They all played 31 minutes or more, up to 37, which Brandon Ingram got. And the bench players, nobody played more than 20 minutes. I'm fine with keeping these minutes as is. I'm also fine with closing. You want your best five guys to close. Those are your best five guys. This is a lineup you close with. But changing the starting five just gives you a little bit more of a running start to the game, because lately they've been kind of stumbling out the gates and having to make up for it. To kind of try and further highlight some of the things I'm mentioning here, interesting numbers are coming from Scotty Barnes with and without RJ Barrett on the floor. RJ Barrett with and without Scotty Barnes, not a ton of differences compared to when he's on or off. As for Scotty Barnes, he's playing the bulk of his minutes with RJ. More than 75% of his minutes come with RJ Barrett also on the floor. But in the 111 minutes he's played without RJ Barrett this season, his points per 75 possessions go up 11. His rebounds go up 5.6. His true shooting goes up 6.2. And his three-point percentage, just as strangely, goes up 23.3%. So I'm not sure how much this really means. Maybe there is a hint that Barnes thrives with more spacing and when he is the more ball-dominant player. Could be. But it's just interesting statistics to look at here. Again, I'm not saying that the Raptors need to make a change right now, but there has been a consistent trend, even in spite of the fact that they're winning, that they're starting slowly, and we're not getting very good numbers out of this starting unit as a whole to start games. So my theory is starting games, the floor spacing is affecting the team to such a degree. There's too many players who need the same type of touches that it is kind of hampering the Raptors out the gate, making them start slower. So if this is persistent through 20, 22 games to start the season, then I think a real conversation needs to happen about now making the change. Not just starting to investigate the possibility of making that change. Making that change, is it time to do it? Real conversations should happen in a couple of weeks for the Raptors if this is a persistent issue. As for closing games and minutes, you still play RJ Barrett the 32-plus minutes. You still close with your best five on the floor. Because when it comes to those closing minutes, the late stages of the game, it turned into a much slower game. It turned into much more of a half-court battle. And when you're in those sort of half-court battles where oftentimes you can default to these sort of isolation sort of plays, which the Raptors have done in the past, not necessarily the best basketball, but that's just sometimes what happens. I think having your best scorers, your best players on the floor is a fruitful endeavor, because if you've got somebody as talented as the scorer as RJ Barrett, as talented a player as Scotty Barnes, as talented a scorer as Brandon Ingram, you're almost at a certain point picking your poison, especially with the way Emmanuel Quickley's been playing this season. And we saw that example in the late stages against the Charlotte Hornets. Brandon Ingram gets the ISO on the Raptors' last offensive possession. huge double comes his way. He's good enough to make the pass out to an open RJ Barrett, who they helped off of. RJ Barrett gets a lane to the rim, finishes. Raptors lead by 2, get the 2 big blocks at the end of the game in order to win it. So again, we're not making the change right now, but there is a possibility that the Raptors are not optimizing their current team with their current starting 5. They're kind of optimizing it with the way they're finishing games, but certainly curious seeing these numbers here. Maybe the Raptors, who are good, can get even better by making this change and taking RJ Barrett out of the starting lineup and putting him on the bench. And now some people kind of think, hey, he's a $30 million player, and he's not quite, but he's close to a $30 million player. That's not a guy you can have coming off the bench. Look, not an easy conversation to have, but communicate these numbers with him. Communicate where things are going right. Communicate that he's going to be more effective in different lineups where he's getting on the ball more often. And communicate that this is for the betterment of the team. I'm sure he's a big boy. He'll be able to handle it. He'll understand. He's still getting his minutes, just it won't be out of the gate alongside these other guys. I think that this is something the Raptors should consider going forward, but not something that they should implement just yet. Let's try to work it out and make this the best starting 5 you have. Let's do a little bit more to try and make it work before making a drastic decision like this.